Welcome to the Dale Wiley Show. In the fall of 1986, I remember a song being on the radio. I hadn't heard of this band before, but man, the song just did everything to me. That was Keep Your Hands to Yourself by the Georgia Satellites. The guy that wrote that song and played that awesome guitar is here with us tonight. I'm very excited to introduce to the Dale Wiley Show, Dan Baird.
Well, we're lucky to be here today with Dan Baird, an icon on the Americana and roots rock, country, whatever you want to call it, music scene. And Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I am doing fine.
How is the weather in Nashville?
Well, it just got cloudy and hadn't started to rain, a la Chuck, but it got cold here all of a sudden. It turned to winter, but that's better than springtime in December.
There you go.
Need to have all four seasons. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one reason to live in Nashville, isn't it? You'll have all four seasons in one day.
1 hour. Yeah.
You are originally, or you're associated with Georgia because of the Georgia Satellites.
Right. Well, I grew up in it. Yeah, I grew up in Atlanta, north of Atlanta, in an area called Sandy Springs, which was nicknamed the Golden Ghetto. You'd have to be local to understand it. It's a very involved thing, but it fit perfectly. Lived there from the time I was 3. My folks were from Atlanta, but my dad was doing some Navy business, so I was born in San Diego. But I consider myself a Georgian,
right?
Because I was raised there. I spent from 3 to 35 there, and right. I moved here in 89-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
in 89.
That was the time a lot of people, the Olympics were headed that way, and a lot of people decided that Atlanta had kind of lost its small town charm.
Well, I went through a divorce and got a gal here in Nashville, and we talked about it, and transplanting her to Atlanta, then me going off on forays. And leaving her, in a strange city. Good luck, I'm sure you'll meet people you like, and I didn't care where I lived. And we were thinking about it. And there's a place in Nashville called the Pancake Pantry. And it's got a pretty good breakfast, but you really want to skip it during the busy hours. Anyway, this was during the Dan and definitely rock and roll hours time frame. And we'd get up at the crack of noon and we'd go get some breakfast around 2:00. And we were in there. It was a weekday, and it was the two of us. They were getting ready to close at 3. And had the waitress and a cook. And this long string bean fella comes walking in, and, older gent. And he holds up his hand, howdy, and the waitress says, "Same old thing, Roy." And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, that's Roy motherfucking Acuff." and he didn't get, he got treated like a human, not an icon. And that's one of the things that Nashville has. There's a Nashville cool where you don't lose it when you meet somebody or you're in the proximity of somebody that you've seen on television or heard on their radio. You just don't do that. It's just kind of like you going like, "Oh man, you're not cool." and you can live like a human being here. And it was getting a little weird in Atlanta for me. There's that guy, and you could feel that, and it's just like, it just doesn't exist here. So autonomy, until you don't have it, you don't know what it really means. And then once you get it back, you go like, "Man, I'm never moving."
Well, that's pretty great. So you've been there for more than almost 30 years now. So
yeah,
you're a Nashvilleian at this point.
Yes.
You were a rock and roll fan before you became a rock and roll star. What kind of led you in the direction of what you've done for the past number of years?
Well, man, it's that's a wide question. I like the way the stuff sounded, the movement in it. That's the most physically attractive thing about rock and roll is it's a movement oriented music. Rather than the sad tale, you can have a sad tale, but it has to move. Hence the end roll.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to really discuss, but I found that my particular voice, I'm not a good singer, like Frank Sinatra is a good singer. I can't do that.
Right.
But I found my vehicle for expression inside, this music's forgiving enough.
Tell me who was the first guy or band or gal or who was the first one that made you say, I want to do this?
Probably the Stones when Beggar's Banquet came out. Johnny Rivers actually before that. He was an obtainable cool.
Oh, Johnny Rivers is the best. I mean, those sides are just awesome.
Oh man, I mean, it's like all the fake live stuff, and then the one that's got Summer Wind on it changes. I think. I mean, it's like I was a big Johnny Rivers fan.
Right.
Because I couldn't sing like the Beach Boys. I wasn't as cool as the Beatles, and the Stones hadn't really developed the whole thing at that particular point in time. I remember December's Children was the first album I bought by them because they were starting to develop the thing. And by Beggar's Banquet, they had, they did their little foray into psychedelia, and then just went, let's make a roots record. And so Beggar's Banquet, by my counting, that was right around the time of the International Submarine Band, and it was right around the time of Sweethearts of the Rodeo and Graham Parsons. Everybody kind of, went, oh, wait a minute. But the Stones kept the blues thing going in it, with Prodigal Son and Stray Cat Blues. It was, that was a pretty magic record for me.
Well, I mean, that's one that's still, 68 to 72 Stones. I just don't know that anybody can do better than that. I mean, that's
pretty tough. Tough. I mean, the seeds sown in 65 through 67, can't be overlooked. I mean, but it just kept getting bolder and more, now don't dip our toe in, let's jump in.
Right.
Right. And that's pretty much when I went, this is the stuff I want to, rip off for the rest of my life.
That's funny. Now you eventually, did you actually go see the Sex Pistols when they were in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember, you being quoted in a book about that, book about that.
Yeah. I can't remember the guy who wrote it, but I was a friend of his. And anyway, he said he was doing a book, and I went, I saw him. And we started talking. He's like, whoa. But, I had a girlfriend, Doreen, who worked at the Great Southeast Music Hall, where the first show they did in the States. And I remember going to see him, and, I went to see the Clash when they came through, the London Calling photo on the front. I saw that moment.
Right.
And yes, the bass had been cutting out all night, and Paul Simon had just had enough. That's it. Fuck you all the way.
And that was in New York, right?
No. That was in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, that happened at the Agora Ballroom.
Okay.
That happened at the Agora Ballroom. He, that's just that was a whoa moment. I've never seen anybody beat one. But I sure did that night. But with the Pistols and them, I went in expecting a punk rock thing. And in both cases, I saw rock and roll bands, that dressed differently and talked about certain issues more than others. But especially with the Clash, by that point they had made their third record, or their second record, which I thought was, amazing sounding. And they had started turning into a full-on rock and roll band that, had, a guy with a mohawk and, and they did, a little bit of reggae in there, but not all that much. And it was funny to see those bands and go, you're just rock bands. It's like you can put all the hyphens and pre-names you want to. It's just, they all, like, are you a good rock band tonight?
Right.
And with the Pistols, they had a great drummer, a good guitar player, great front man, but Sid, not so much. And, he looked great. He mean, he looked like every mother's nightmare. He had it.
But there's so much similarity between just the Sex Pistols and just the straight ahead rock and roll of the 50s, and I think that gets overlooked.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, you listen to Brand New Cadillac and Train in Vain, and you go, this is rock band stuff.
Right.
This is rock and roll band stuff. It's, these are not, you listen to God Save the Queen. That is a great rock and roll song.
It sure is, yeah. And that whole album is it's riddled with that.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's like I remember I heard the Ramones' first record. I was at that point in time sharing a house with a guy that was a record reviewer. He got the record. I'd read about him in Roll of the Stone, and back when they talked about music, and I put it on and I went, shit's gonna change.
Right.
Shit's gonna change. It's gonna be good.
Right.
It's gonna be good. The whole bloating thing, really did happen. And just get short, get punchy.
Oh yeah, and then of course I'm I was in high school when the Georgia Satellites record came out, and
I was not.
You were not. You were past high school. But I tell you, I mean, to my ears, which had grown up listening to both sides of the coin, the Waylon and early rock and roll stuff, and then by that time was much more into hair metal or whatever. I mean, that was just the best sounding record that there was. I mean, you could just turn that thing up, and I mean, it just sounded like $1 million. And
thank you very much. It's a little reverb heavy, but that was at the time.
I don't know that you can say anything is too reverb heavy. You need some reverb in there. And
take a listen to that snare drum. It's still echoing.
Well, so how long had you been in that incarnation when you guys got such a great break? What happened?
Well, what happened with me and Rick Richards were the mainstays of the band.
Right.
And we had three? Yeah, we had three different drummers. Marl was our third one. And we had a revolving bass player slot. You know,
right.
we'd have like 7 or 8 guys in town that could cover it. You know, just we got a gig. You know, it's crap pay. You know, you want to make $40 and sing,
right.
And sing and have some fun and possibly get a few drinks on the house. Come on.
Right.
So, but Keith Christopher was our first one. Brendan O'Brien was our second one. Rex Patton. The list goes on. Dave Hewitt actually cut the EP with us, with the drummer that was with us for a couple of months named Randy DeLay. And David Michelson before that. He was the first drummer.
Wow. Well, and Keith Christopher still plays. I mean, has been throughout your career. He's
yes, he has. He's been gone from the band now for a couple of years, but he's doing pretty good now, and he's playing with Aaron Lee Tashin a bunch. And some other people, and so he's doing good, and that's great news to me.
Right. And so when when the first album came out, that was just the right time. I don't think that time exists anymore for such a rootsy, just song to get out there and have such a wide success.
We were a breath of fresh air. You remember, God, that was the very first granola cereal, Heartland or something like that. And they were sitting there going like, what kind of box are we going to have? And they decided on a plain brown box, which on the cereal aisle stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right. Because
of, all the primary color, screaming loud bullshit, tricks and all that business. It's just like it was obvious. So I think that we were kind of, you had all this other stuff that was real, I don't know, overdone. And we came in
overdone and just, away from that influence of, one half Muddy Waters and, a little bit of Don Baird thrown in there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's, when you lose touch with all of that, it gets, it gets like, where is the humanness in this?
Right.
It's the thing that I've always had a hard time with metal. The really heavy stuff. It's kind of like, you guys ever get laid? How come you don't sing about girls?
Right.
And it's kind of like, it almost sounds like they're working a business model. As far as like lyric content.
Right. And how much they hate everything or whatever.
I hate you, mommy. Comics aren't real. I mean, especially the bloody ones.
Right.
So, it's just, that wasn't around. It's like when I was a kid, I listened to overdone music. Hell, I listened to Vanilla Fudge and Iron Butterfly and all that other crap that, was out at the time, which you listen to when you're a kid. And, King Crimson, and it's like, and it's just like, now it's just kind of like, no, don't put that on, please. It's not very great. It isn't about anything.
Right.
It's about made up shit.
And you just stepped up to the mic with the Telecaster. Did you have your Telecaster with the Humble Pie lineage by that time, or was that a different guitar?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes,
well,
I got that in.
Tell everybody about that guitar, because that's a real amazing
all
guitar.
Right. Somebody broke in my house and took my 63 Tele. And it was a mongrel, but the neck was a 63 Strat neck, believe it or not, that felt great on a Tele body. Somebody had cut a pine paneling pickguard on it. It was ugly. I don't know why in God's name somebody stole it, but they did. And I got the guy sold me one for $250, a Tele. And let me tell you, this was a Tele. They are not all created equal. This thing weighed a ton, no sustain. Steve Marriott lived in Atlanta, 82, 83.
Okay.
So he came and sat in with us one night, and he was dead sober the first time.
The first time.
And he just tore it up. I mean, I was just sitting there going like, not only did I end up with his guitar, I ended up, trying to sing like him.
Right.
It's just like, I got to learn how to project. That guy, honest to God, projected. He didn't, half the time he didn't need a PA.
Right.
Anyway, he said, come on over to the house. Let's listen to some records and have some fun. And so I'm going like, well, yeah, it's Steve Marriott.
Right, absolutely.
And so we went over there, and I saw this guitar sitting in a different room. And I said, mind if I play on that Tele? He goes, it's an Esquire, mate, go ahead. And 3 hours later, everybody said, it's time to go. And I looked up and I went, if you ever have a reason in this world to sell this thing, please let me know. I will find a way. And he went, duly noted. I went around town moping for a couple of months, about the guitar I could never have.
Right.
It felt absolutely perfect. My left hand just went, oh, my God, you're home. I had a friend who worked at a music store who had heard me whining and moaning. And he came to, we were doing a residency 4 nights a week, 3 sets a night at a place called Hedgens. And he came up between first and second set, and he had a blanket and obviously something under there, looked like a guitar. And he goes, give me your Tele. And I looked at him, and he went, give me your Tele. So I handed him my Tele, and he handed me that. And he goes, I think you play tens. And pulled the blanket off. And I went, oh, my God, plugged it in, and was just sitting there just laughing. He goes, you owe me $275.
Oh, wow.
And took off with my Tele. And Steve had told the guy that he traded that towards his blonde 335 that he ended up as his last guitar. You can see it in all the Packet of 3 stuff on YouTube. But this guitar went towards, he goes, there's a fella that won't, and he goes, I know the guy. He's been crying about it. Jesus Christ, shut him up. And it's sitting, about 7 feet away from me right this moment.
Wow.
So, and we used to run into Steve back when he moved back to London. Seemed like the Sats always had an off night, and he had a gig. And we'd all go down and see him, and he'd always ask, how's our guitar? So, and I played the life out of it. I can't use it live anymore. It won't take the water and I sweat. I'm a prodigious sweater while singing. Singing is hard work.
Oh, and being under the lights and everything else. I mean, the people you.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, your body temp goes up, and I mean, you're keeping your core temperature at something that is, aerobic for 2 hours.
Right.
And it's just like, most guitars don't like being, put in the shower. That thing, I've beat the finish off. I've worn the finish off the back. It seeps in, gets into the electronics, begins to short out.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. But I mean, it's on the last record. It will be on the next record.
It's just been taken off the road like
desk job from here on out.
There you go. What year Esquire is that?
It's a 57. Actually, it's a 57 neck with a 62 body because I talked to Ian McLagan, and he said that him and Steve swapped necks.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve liked the sound of his, but he liked Ian's neck and vice versa. So they swapped.
Wow. So it's got that rock and roll lineage as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And then, of course, it played on "Keep Your Hands to Yourself." So it is.
Yeah, well, it also played on "Tin Soldier," which I think is a lot cooler.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so do you.
But I mean,
all of a sudden, that guitar's even cooler.
Well, I mean, it's as cool as it can get. I mean, that's the ultimate tin and cool.
There's the end of part 1 of my interview with Dan Baird. Come back tomorrow and find out more about Dan's current projects, his love affair with baseball, and some good advice for anyone wanting to play guitar. This has been the Dale Wiley Show. www.dalewiley.com. Buy some books, throw some money. Copyright 2016.